Welcome to the Holy Land in this biblical site of the Southern Stairs. We are on the southern part of the platform where the temple was located, and right in front of me over here was the city of David. And we believe that it's right here or in this very vicinity is where Pentecost happened. Now the Southern Stairs were the main access point to the temple throughout much of its history because the city of David was right to my right here, so therefore this was the main access to the whole Temple Mount area. This area, these southern stairs, are also called the Rabbi stairs. So these are where the rabbis would bring their disciples and they would teach them right on the stairs leading up here. In fact, you can see where these people are sitting right here. Those are the original stones during the time of Christ. So it's very probable that they are sitting right on the stones where Christ could have walked. We're going to be showing you those stones up close here shortly. So these were the Rabbi stairs, the southern stairs, and now there's a wall here, but in the time of Christ, these stairs led right up to the Temple Mount. Now also these stairs are staggered. King Herod enlarged the Temple Mount and built these, and he did it in such a way so that when you went up to the Temple Mount, the stairs were kind of irregular, so you had to pause and contemplate and go up in a meditative state rather than just rushing up in a methodical way going up there. So well, here we want to show you the actual stairs here going up to you and show you the original ones. So I'm going to walk over here and show you where the original stones were. These are the original stones right in here going up to the Temple Mount. These here are the original stones right here. So these would have been the stones where Christ would have walked, where the disciples would have been taught. So all these are the original temple stones right here. And as I say, you had to walk up. You couldn't just walk up just in the smooth. It was a methodical walk going up. So right in here are the original. Then there's been some new ones placed right up here. So what's unique here about these southern stairs? Well, the southern stairs were the main entrance to the Temple Mount during the time of Christ. They were accessed from the original part of the city called the City of David, just below as we mentioned. And they were also called the Rabbi stairs, as we indicated as well. Now, as we mentioned, we believe that Pentecost took place right here in this area. The upper room is just up to my right, just a stone's throw away, so it's possible that the Pentecost began at the upper room, but for 3,000 people to be saved, to be baptized, there were probably 15 to 25,000 people that were here. It was on the day of Pentecost, the Feast of Pentecost, so there were probably scholars or theologians say that the city of Jerusalem would swell to somewhere around 150,000 people during the time of the festivals. So anyway, Pentecost means 50. So we're going to focus in this video on the situation of Pentecost. So 50 days from Passover, the Feast of Weeks, also known as the beginning of the harvest, was celebrated. At this feast, the Jews were to give God the first part of their harvest. So Pentecost means 50. Pentecost also marks 50 days from the time the Israelites left Egypt and arrived at Mount Sinai, where God gave them the 10 Commandments and the law. So it's interesting that 50 days after the Jews left Egypt, God gives them the law on Mount Sinai. 50 days after Christ rises from the dead, God gives the new birth of the new church. So 50 days after the Israelites left Egypt, their nation is born, or the law is given. 50 days after Christ dies on the cross, rises from the dead, then the church is born. Now let's look at some reasons why many theologians believe that Pentecost likely happened here, and that's our position as well. And we're not dogmatic in it. It's just we think it's a very, very likely possibility. And as we go through this, I think you're going to learn some fascinating things about why it's a great possibility that this area, or right in here in this area, the southern stairs, the southern part of the Temple Mount, or right in here is where Pentecost actually happens. Now, the early group of disciples and core believers were constantly in prayer, and most formal prayers took place at the temple, but not always. So the disciples continued meeting on the Temple Mount praying, and so anyway, the prayers took place on the Temple Mount, and the coming of the Holy Spirit filled the house. Now, the temple is referred to all throughout the Old Testament as the house. So it says in John 2:17, it says, Christ says, "The zeal for your house will consume me." Now, it's possible that the text is referring to the house, maybe the upper room or a house close by, but it also could be referring to the house of the Lord, this area right here. So multitudes of Jews would have been right here in this area for Pentecost, and a large multitude came together when they heard this sound. Probably a crowd of around 15 to 30,000 people were right here. And so, as we mentioned, many scholars say that during the Passover, that city would swell to around 150,000 people, as we said. So in Acts 2:41, it says that 3,000 were saved. And in order for 3,000 to be saved, there were probably at least 15 to 25,000, because there's the percentage of people that are saved are small versus how many people are always present. So, and it says that those who were baptized were 3,000. And right below me are mitzvahs, where the purification places were, baths where people would purify themselves. And now it seems that the Temple Mount, this area right here, would have been the natural place for the church to be born, for Pentecost to happen, as it was the center of the public activities. We have to admit that the house where it says that the Holy Spirit came couldn't have been the place where all of Pentecost took place, because 3,000 people, just believers alone, could not fit in a house. There was not a house in Jerusalem, a public facility big enough to house 3,000 people. So the fact that it maybe started in a house and then moved outside is likely, or it's referring to the house of the Lord being the house where Pentecost comes at. So anyway, it was a public place, and this was the natural gathering. There were people from all over the known world, Jews from all over the known world that were together, gathered here at this place. So this would have been the place, the natural place. So as we mentioned, there were probably 20 to 30,000 people that witnessed the event of Pentecost, if not more, because it was also during the morning time of prayer. So it was at 9 o'clock in the morning, and that was the time of the morning prayers on the temple. So the people would have been gathered here. It was a festival, so it was a feast of weeks, so Pentecost, so the people would have been gathered for morning prayers on the Temple Mount. So it would have been the natural place for all of the people to be gathered. The Temple Mount was the center of activity for the whole city of Jerusalem. So it's, like I say, it just seems to be the natural place. But once again, we want to be careful, and we don't want to be dogmatic and say this is the place. We're just saying that we think it's a good likely possibility. We're thinking of, as we analyze the text very carefully, we're thinking that this makes the most sense for where Pentecost probably happened. And as we mentioned, it could have started at the upper room, but wherever it ended had to be a public place where many people, 20 to 30, if not more, thousand people were gathered together. So let's look at just a few things about Pentecost. Pentecost is a fulfillment of many Old Testament prophecies. And it's amazing to see many pictures in the Old Testament that are fulfilled in the New Testament. Here's just a couple. The Old Testament Passover Lamb becomes Christ, the New Testament Passover Lamb. The Jewish nation was born on Mount Sinai at Pentecost. The Christian church was born at Pentecost. The Passover Lamb was sacrificed on Passover afternoon at 3 p.m., the ninth hour, which was 3 o'clock. Christ was sacrificed at the same hour as well. So the Passover Lamb was sacrificed at 3 o'clock on Passover Day, Friday, in the afternoon. And Christ dies on the cross at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the exact time of the Passover Lamb. So anyway, as we look at this particular area here, it's our belief that Pentecost probably happened here. They were all in one place. Peter stands up and he begins to preach a sermon, and the people accuse them of saying, hey, you guys are filled with wine, you're drunk. And Peter says, how can it be? It's only 9 o'clock in the morning. And of course, once again, 9 o'clock was the hour of prayer. So anyway, as I look at all these things and we put those together, we believe that it's a good possibility that Pentecost happened right here in this very area. There's, like I say, there's a mikvahs, everything here. If not, maybe on the Temple Mount, somewhere in this public area here around the temple. But at the least we can surmise is that these stairs here were the main access to the temple. Christ taught on these stairs. The disciples walked on these stairs right here. So anyway, fascinating place. We're on holy ground. It's just such a privilege to be here. So anyway, hopefully you've learned a little bit about the Southern Stairs area. And thank you for watching this video, and God bless.